Rowan Atkinson has spent more than 4 decades making the world laugh, largely without saying a word. But the story behind that career, a childhood stutter, a physics degree, and a lifelong discomfort with fame, is far less silent. Rowan Sebastian Atkinson was born on January 6, 1955, in Consett, a small town in County Durham, England, the youngest of 4 boys. His eldest brother, Paul, died in infancy, leaving Rowan to grow up alongside 2 surviving brothers. One of them, Rodney, went on to become an economist and came close to leading the UK Independence Party around 2000. Life on the family farm was quiet and disciplined, an unlikely upbringing for someone who'd eventually build a career on loud, physical silliness. Around age 5, Rowan developed a pronounced stutter that made school difficult. At Durham Chorister School, classmates were unkind about both his speech and his unusual, expressive face. Some reportedly called him alien-looking. A staff member there later recalled him as a shy boy who struggled to speak. One of his schoolmates during those years was a young Tony Blair, 2 years his junior, who later remembered how hard things were for Atkinson at the time. Then something unexpected happened. Whenever Atkinson performed, the stutter vanished entirely. The very thing that made his early years painful turned out to be the mechanism behind his gift. Academically, he thrived despite the bullying, earning strong A-level science grades and a place at Newcastle University in 1973, where he studied electrical and electronic engineering. He graduated in 1975 and, following his father, went on to Queen's College, Oxford, for a master's degree focused on self-tuning control systems. Dense, technical work that had nothing to do with comedy. He began a PhD, but never finished it. Something else had already started pulling him away. At Oxford, Atkinson joined the drama scene in a review group called the Etcetras, where in 1975 he met a young writer named Richard Curtis, a meeting that would shape both of their careers for decades. Curtis later described watching Atkinson perform for the first time, an unassuming figure who transformed the moment he took the stage, delivering a driving sketch and a mimed bit that Curtis called pure genius. In August 1976, Atkinson performed with the Oxford Review at the Edinburgh Festival Fringe, his first exposure to a national audience. And the show's success made clear that his future wasn't going to be in engineering, despite completing his master's thesis in 1978. He'd go on to become an early adopter of hybrid and electric cars, applying his technical background well outside the stage, but comedy had already become his real home. His first major break came in 1979 with a BBC Radio 3 series called The Atkinson People, co-written with Curtis and produced by Griff Rhys-Jones, in which he voiced a range of invented characters. It aired in a poor time slot and drew few listeners, but critics recognized his talent even if audiences hadn't found the show yet. The years that followed were rough. The BBC rejected him repeatedly between 1978 and 1979, and Atkinson has described feeling lost and even considering a return to engineering. His stutter tended to resurface under the stress of auditions and interviews, but he'd already discovered the workaround. Performing as a character let him bypass it entirely. He kept sharpening his craft with old Oxford collaborators like Angus Deaton, who played the straight man to Atkinson's more outlandish creations on radio, and who later appeared in both Mr. Bean and Blackadder. By 1979, back at the Edinburgh Fringe at 24, Atkinson was performing a largely wordless show reminiscent of silent film comedy, polarizing some audience members while captivating others with how much he could express through movement and expression alone. A 1979 pilot called Canned Laughter, in which he played several roles, including an early version of Mr. Bean, didn't get picked up as a series. But by the time he appeared on Wogan in 1980, he'd essentially mastered turning performance into a shield against his stutter. That same year, the BBC gave him Not the 9 O'Clock News, a topical sketch show originally intended to premiere earlier in 1979 before a general election pushed its debut to October. The first episode drew fewer than 1 million viewers and scathing reviews. Future co-star Mel Smith reportedly called it the worst half-hour of television he'd ever seen. Despite that, a BBC controller liked what he saw and ordered a second series, a decision that ended up making the show one of the more influential British comedy series of its era. Behind the scenes, things were tense. After the first series, cast member Chris Langham was let go, replaced by Griff Rhys-Jones, a decision Atkinson reportedly opposed and tried to reverse, to no avail. The fallout was bitter enough that Langham didn't speak to the group for years. Budget cuts followed, forcing the show to scale back and shift its tone towards sharper, odder humor. It was during the second series that a sketch called Gerald the Gorilla aired, with Mel Smith as a professor presenting a trained gorilla, played by Atkinson, who turns out to be far angrier and more articulate than expected. The sketch was popular enough that it helped the show win a Silver Rose at the Montreux Festival and a BAFTA for Best Light Entertainment Program. And it hinted at the kind of physical, offbeat comedy that would define Atkinson's later work in Blackadder and Mr. Bean. The show even produced a novelty single, I Like Trucking, on which all 4 cast members sang. Atkinson reportedly drove the truck in the sketch himself, holding a real heavy goods license. By March 1982, though, the show ended, not from falling ratings, but because the cast had simply burned out. The pace, pressure, and constant creative grind took a toll, particularly on Atkinson, who has spoken about long-standing struggles with anxiety. Rather than milk the show's popularity further, the cast scattered. Pamela Stephenson headed to Hollywood. Mel Smith and Griff Rhys-Jones launched their own series, and Atkinson moved straight into a new project. In June 1983, Atkinson launched The Blackadder, co-created with Richard Curtis, built on the premise of an alternate history where Richard III had won the Battle of Bosworth Field. Atkinson played the scheming Prince Edmund in lavish, costly productions filmed at real castles, expensive enough that after one season, the BBC nearly canceled the show outright. An international Emmy win bought it a second chance, but only with a much smaller budget and scope. That reset paid off. Blackadder 2, which premiered in 1986, brought in Ben Elton as co-writer and traded the grand sets for tighter, character-driven scripts. Miranda Richardson joined as Queenie, and the show's sharper, more focused comedy won over both critics and audiences who'd been skeptical at first. The series' final chapter, Blackadder Goes Forth, 1989, was set in the trenches of World War I, pairing dark historical subject matter with the show's trademark wit. It won Best Comedy Series at the 1990 BAFTAs, was later ranked among the best British TV shows of all time by the British Film Institute, and placed second in a 2004 BBC poll of Britain's favorite sitcoms. Atkinson has described it as the least personally stressful project of his career, largely because the workload and the improvisation was shared across a trusted ensemble that included Hugh Laurie and Stephen Fry. Then came Mr. Bean. The character premiered on January 1st, 1990, drawing over 13 million viewers, and went on to be sold in more than 200 countries, a nearly wordless character built for universal appeal. But the role took a genuine emotional toll on Atkinson, who said he didn't particularly enjoy playing it, found it draining, and often looked forward to filming wrapping up. Because the character barely spoke, every ounce of comedy had to come from his face and body, technically demanding work that left him exhausted, even as the character became a global phenomenon. The 1997 feature film Bean was a massive commercial success worldwide, and the character later returned for an animated series, 2002 to 2004, later revived, that gave Atkinson a break from the physical demands by letting him focus solely on voice work. Mr. Bean's most-watched moment may have come at the 2012 London Olympics opening ceremony, where Atkinson performed a comic bit during Chariots of Fire in front of a global audience estimated in the hundreds of millions, a performance that reportedly left him drained for weeks afterward and is often cited as his last major, full physical outing as the character. Atkinson's other roles have ranged widely. His small but memorable turn as a nervous priest in Four Weddings and a Funeral, 1994, helped cement his reputation for scene-stealing comic timing on a modest budget. The Johnny English spy parody franchise, launched in 2003 and drawing on an earlier ad character, gave him a vehicle for physical comedy, stunt work, and, in later installments, commentary on surveillance and cybersecurity that drew on